If you keep telling yourself it's going to be difficult, it will be difficult because you wind yourself up. You can be a leader. Number one, get yourself together, understand what leading is really all about. None of it was really practical. What we want is something now.
So what was the one piece of advice that you would share with leaders? So what's the one book that changed your perspective on leadership? Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we empower tomorrow's leaders through the sharing of knowledge, experience, and stories. I'm your host, Rob Kamranpoor, and my very special guest today, all the way from Australia, is Mark McPherson. Mark is a leadership and communication expert with decades of experience in helping professionals master difficult conversations, build high-performance teams, and create culture of respect and accountability. A former senior leader turned consultant, speaker, author, Mark has dedicated his career to teaching leaders how to handle tough situations with confidence, clarity, and composure. Again, thank you so much for being with me here today, Mark, and I'm excited to do this podcast with you.
Well, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, because I'm going to use those exact words you've said now on my LinkedIn profile.
Awesome.
But I think you summed it up beautifully. So thank you for that. It's really appreciated.
Thank you so much, Mark. Are you ready to get this started?
Oh, most certainly. I'm ready. I've had a glass of water. So what more could you want?
Nice. Excellent. So, Mark, why don't you start off by sharing your story with us today and how you got started in leadership?
Wow, that's a great question. I think, like many of us, I get thrown into leadership.
Mm.
You're fantastic at this level, and suddenly you're at this level, and that happened to me. I one day found myself in charge of a group of people, and as you may be able to relate to this, everyone worked well except for one person who
Mhm.
really wasn't playing ball, and I don't think it was necessarily their fault. This is a team that had been left to their own devices for way too long. So I put off. I'm sure that your listeners will relate to this. You'll be able to relate. I put it off dealing with it because I thought, it'll get okay. You know, things will they'll just work out if I just forget it, pretend it's not happening. It didn't work like that. It just got worse and worse and worse as I went along. And I went to lots of courses. I read lots of books. I've got a bookshelf in this room that's rather huge. But I was really disappointed. None of it was really practical. What we want is something now. We have to deal with these people tomorrow or this afternoon. And none of it was really practical. So that's why I ended up devising my own material to help myself. And then I found, wow, hang on, this actually works. I can help other people. And that's really how I got into it. And I know that we've gone from management to leadership over the last 20 years or so. But I think that's what it's all about. As a leader, for me, I found myself having to step up to the plate and have these conversations. And boy, oh boy, I won't lie to you, I've been too soft.
Mm.
And I've been too hard. And there's somewhere in the middle of that which I call being tactfully assertive. You can do both. That's where I've got to where I am.
Thanks, Mark, for sharing that. Now, one of the things you mentioned, Mark, was management and leadership. Now, I get this question asked a lot on social media. Can you tell us what your definition or what's the difference between management and leadership in your opinion?
Well, you've asked a great question, because for me personally, I think there's too much has been lumped on the shoulders of leadership. It's almost a catch-all for everything. In fact, a little while ago, I was part of a group, and we were asked to write down what topics should be in a course on leadership. And we got down to about number 10 before we actually got to something which I'd call leading. Everything else was there's no end to these wonderful attributes we expect leaders. So I feel sorry for leaders these days. I think they're being overburdened. But look, as a manager was simple. Here's the strategic plan.
Yep.
I have people doing stuff, and my job as a manager was to make sure that they did stuff and did it well. Now, that sounds a bit brutal, but of course, as a manager, as a good manager, you're kind, you're thoughtful, you're supportive, you delegate properly. But leadership is about leading, not just managing. Leadership is about having a vision. And I was very fortunate when I took over a particular team in the health service in a part of Sydney, Australia. And we were able to forge a new plan, a new way, and being able to, as a leader, not just say, this is what we're going to do, but for me as a leader, be able to say, what will we do? Because I don't pretend to know all about that. I don't pretend to know all about that. Of course, I know a lot of things. I say to myself in the mirror, but I don't know everything.
Yes.
I'm new to these positions, and being able to, as a leader, say, okay, we need a vision for the future. I want to know not where we're going to be next week, but I'm talking about 6 months, 12 months, years ahead. So leading is, to me, is all about having a vision for the future, where we should be, where we could be, and then more importantly, perhaps, how will we get there? Now, as I said, for a leader, I could have simply said, this is what we're doing, you do it. And then you go into management mode. I'm the leader, I know stuff, you do it. But I was very fortunate to be in a position where I was able to say, okay, I might be the leader and I have a vision, but come on, we're going to work together for the next 12 months. What do you think? So I think I want to balance those two when you're a leader. You are the leader. You're not a facilitator. You're not the chairperson of a meeting. You are a leader. But at the same time, you have a group of people who have all sorts of skills and abilities. So how do you tap into them and let them be a part of the show? I don't think it's always easy, but I think it can be done.
Amazing. That's great. And thanks for sharing that, Mark. Now, you talked about, again, leaders having a vision, and I love that. And I think it's very important. Now, what would your advice be for those young leaders in early in their career? How do you develop that vision? Where do you start from?
Oh, wow. I think sometimes visions just come to us. I know that there are CEOs who take over corporations and say, I'm going to move this company in this direction or that direction. I don't know where their vision has come from, to be quite honest. Maybe they're in the shower one day and said, you know what? I've got this great idea. For me, you ask. You take a look around. You need to take a step back and as objectively as possible, and this is not easy, as objectively as possible, say, what would be the right direction here? And for me, I ask people, where do you think we should be in the next few years? What has gone wrong in the past? Now, I don't think you should be dwelling on the past all the time, but one of the reasons why we have a vision for the future is because things aren't quite right now.
Yes.
So I'll go back to asking people. Now, don't get me wrong here. When you ask people for their ideas, you don't have to accept them. No one said, okay, that's your idea. I don't like it, but we've got to do it. That's not the way it works. But if you don't gather people's ideas, please don't think that everything is in your own head. Like I said before, I jokingly said, oh, I'm very smart. Well, we all like to think we're very smart, but don't think you're necessarily the smartest person in the room, because people have experiences and ideas you don't have. So
Exactly.
that's where I go back to. Ask, investigate, think. Even people who were the previous manager or the previous leader, I'm sure they have ideas about where they would have liked things to be, but maybe didn't get there because of economic circumstances. I say ask.
That's amazing.
And one more.
What's that?
Don't be scared of changing your mind. I think it's great when I see people, you should be persistent and you should push on regardless. Yes, but please, a part of good leadership is being able to, hang on a minute here, let's reassess.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great idea in December last year. We're now 6 months later. Is this still the right directions? Things have changed.
Yes.
So I think that's a really important part of being a leader, is not to be stubborn, if you like. Persistence is great. Stubbornness is a big mistake.
Absolutely. No, I love that in terms of, getting your team and people involved in this way. You're empowering your team, you're creating that engagement within the group. So that's excellent. And thanks for sharing that, Mark. Now, during our past conversations, one thing you mentioned was you resisted getting into leadership. And I wanted to find out, like, why was that, and what what hesitations did you have in terms of getting into leadership?
I think it was purely self-esteem
Mm.
and confidence. Oh, I'm really good at this, but managing people. Oh, what if this? What if that? All sorts of excuses. Someone actually told me a while ago, who is now a leader, said to me, I didn't want to be a leader because everyone will hate me. I thought, what a bizarre thing to say. Well, they only hate you if you're not very nice. People will respect you if you're honest and upfront.
Yeah.
But for me, it was really a self-esteem thing. I wish all those decades ago, I wish there was the expertise around, the help around that you can get now.
Mm.
There wasn't. Suddenly you're here. Wow, you're good at that. You can now be in charge. And I see it in sales teams. I see it in school teachers. You're an excellent biology teacher, and now you're suddenly in charge of 20 other teachers, chemistry, geology, whatever. They're often not prepared for it. I see it in businesses, wherever it happened to be, in IT. In fact, I'm dealing with someone right at the moment who is no doubt brilliant at IT, and suddenly they're in charge of other the IT people, whatever the correct term is, coders and the like. And she's floundering because she'll suddenly just put in it. But we have an opportunity now amongst us to these podcasts. They didn't exist.
That's right. That's right.
And now you can pick and choose, and you've got information. So that's the thing for me, was really a case of a lack of confidence, because there was no one around to help me. That we'd have mentors, as they were called, but they're not there every day holding your hand. So that's it for me. It's about confidence. You can do it. You can be a leader. Number one, get yourself together, understand what leading is really all about, but do not, on the other hand, overburden yourself with, I've got to build this, I've got to build a succession plan, I've got to be generous, I've got to be an active listener. All these things are beautiful, but don't put too much on your shoulders in one go, because it can be overwhelming.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Now, Mark, you touch upon the word confidence. And again, I know a lot of people lack that confidence, and especially if you're getting into a new leadership role. Again, what would your advice be to, the young folks out there? How do you build confidence?
Wow. I know that there are courses on confidence building per se, but for me, what gives you confidence is knowledge and skills. I see people who are lacking into confidence, but once they know certain things, this is what's expected of you, this is how you behave in these circumstances, this is the way to delegate, this is how you do this, and then develop the skills of being able to stand up at a staff meeting and say, hi, everybody, this is what I'm thinking of for the next 6 months. We're here today to discuss that. Being able to get up and actually say that and listen and take note. And I'm going to go the extra step here, and being able to say to people, sometimes straight in the face, I said before, step up to the plate. Sometimes you need to step up to the plate and say to someone, Bill, the report you gave yesterday was on time and it was appreciated. There are some gaps in it. Now, nobody, please, nobody wants to go to work to have to say to someone who is a friend maybe, and this is something that happens with young managers, they're friends with people. I'm dealing with someone right now, helping someone. They even went to someone's wedding. That's how close they are. And now, comes tomorrow morning, they're going to have to say, your behavior at the staff meeting
Yes.
to our guest presenter was not acceptable. So that's, I think, how you get confidence is learning. Don't overburden yourself with reading 100 books. You will be overburdened because some of those books say slightly different things.
Yes.
But developing your skills, and one of the best skills you can ever have is being able to, those interpersonal communication skills. Hi, everybody. Don't be scared of standing up at a staff meeting and saying, yes, I'm who I am, and this is my position. Welcome.
That's right.
So I love it when I deal with someone who is, as I said, this woman who's now in charge of this group of IT people. She was in tears on the phone to me about how she tried this and tried that, but to be able to help her develop the skills.
Yeah.
I never used the word confidence with her.
Mm.
Developing the skill, and you can just see it like, wow, I can do that. Now let's practice.
That's right.
Because I am that person you have to speak to tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Give it to me because, and while we're on this topic, I call them real life rehearsals. I like that they're just a step beyond role plays. And yeah, okay, you have to tell me that my behavior at the staff meeting wasn't acceptable. Fine. Tell me all about it. Because that is sometimes what you're faced with. So
Right.
that was a long way of saying confidence comes from knowledge and nice skills and, sure, the right mindset, if you like.
Absolutely. And you touch upon the knowledge and skill, and one of the best ways to do that is the experience you go through itself. You learn a lot from it, and you have to be self-aware and understand what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and fix those corrections as you go along, or fix those mistakes as you go along.
Uh, and I would be very silly if I stood in front of you or sat in front of you, as the case might be, and said I didn't make mistakes. I've made mistakes 20 years ago, and I still think about, why did I say that? Or I could have said it better, or I should have said something and I didn't. So both of those. You will make mistakes.
Yes.
As a parent, no one here can tell me as a parent, oh, I really am perfect. You make mistakes all the time. You say, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with my teenage son. I tried this, I tried that. And I like using the parent one because I think most people can relate to it. If you weren't a parent yourself, you were a son or daughter, you know what it's about. But in the workplace, it's different. But there are some similarities. In the workplace, one of the things you don't have is punishments and pocket money, all
Yeah.
of these things that you might have at home. But there are expectations in the workplace, and I've made mistakes. Here's the tip, though. Yes, you will make mistakes. So what?
Yes.
We all make mistakes. Your job is to say, okay, that wasn't a smart thing to do, or I stuffed up with that, or I could have done a better job. This situation is going to come again. What will I do in the future now to handle it better?
Yes.
That's what it's all about. It's when you sit here, and I admit I've done it once or twice. Oh dear, oh woe is me. That is a losing game. You've got to say, okay, stuffed up. Yeah. What will I do now?
That's right. Absolutely. Amazing. So Mark, I want to take you back on your journey, and what was the biggest challenge you faced along your journey, and how did you overcome it, and what was the greatest lesson that you learned?
Wow. Well, I'm going to go back to the team that I took over. And the biggest challenge was, hey, here's someone who is older than me,
Mm.
someone who has been working with this company longer than me, someone who knows things and knows people. They know everyone in HR. They know the people there. They know the people in accounts. I'm the new kid on the block.
Mhm.
And the biggest challenge is stepping up to the plate. That's the third time I've used that term. I think it says it all. My biggest challenge was building that confidence through knowledge and skills and stepping up to the plate and saying, I really need to have a talk with you. Would 3 p.m. today suit? Now you may be the manager and the leader, and you might be able to say, it will be 3 p.m.
Yeah.
but I think it's called good manners to say, would that suit? Because people do have things on and they have their own meetings and things to go to. But the biggest challenge was that I said, I read all these books and they really were not practical enough. I want stuff that I can say, tomorrow or at 3 p.m., I need to speak to this person. What am I going to say in what order? And I'll leave a little thing with you, which I'll jump a bit ahead and say, I write personal conversation scripts for people.
Mm.
This is what you say in this order, and here's the last bit of those scripts. Be quiet. That's it. You've said it, because I see it too often in the workplace, especially young managers, young leaders, their first job at speaking to someone about their bad behavior or poor work performance. I'm really sorry it came to this. I know I'm new to this, and I'm sure things will be better next time. And I'm sorry I had to have this conversation with you. Stop it. Stop it. If you are tactful as well as assertive, there's no need to say that.
Mm.
Earlier today, Bill, at the staff meeting, you said, that's a problem, and please don't say it again. I didn't say that. I didn't raise my voice when I said that. So you can say these things in a way which you then, that's it. You finish and you stop. That's it. So in regard to your question about my biggest challenges was really looking at myself in the mirror and saying, I can do this, practicing, having the words, and then saying them, and feeling good about yourself. My job is to help leaders go home at the end of the day, Rob, and
Gotcha.
say, okay, it was a hard day. I did pretty well. I made an honest effort. I did a good
Yes.
job. And you go home, your family or wherever, pat the dog, have a glass of wine if that's your thing, and feel good about yourself. That's what I want young leaders to do, all leaders.
Good. Excellent. Now, you touched upon a couple of things, Mark. You alluded to the difficult conversations, and one of your subject matter areas is the difficult conversations, and I want to get into that. And I have challenged and asked a few people this, and I'm going to challenge you the same way. Again, this is just my opinion. This is something I came across. A lot of us call these difficult conversations, Mark. Why do we call it difficult conversations? And, again, how do we prepare for these conversations?
I think there's 3 reasons or maybe 4 reasons why they're difficult conversations. The first thing is there are some topics we don't want to talk about.
Mhm.
That's the first thing. Who wants to say to someone on their staff who has been looking forward to having that opportunity to act up in a position and they think they're going to get it, and you made a different decision? Who wants to look at someone in the face and say, look, I know that Rob, you're in front of me, Rob, so Rob, I know you were looking forward to that acting up position, but I've given it to Susan.
Mhm.
Some topics are unpleasant. There's no doubt about that. Giving bad news is always about unpleasant topics. The second reason is the person themselves who you're speaking to. There are times when we fear. That's what makes it difficult. They're tough to think about, let alone actually have.
Yeah.
Oh no, Rob's going to get angry, and Rob's going to, oh my, or I know what Rob's like. you know, or they might, what if they cry?
Yeah.
These are all things that have happened to me over the years. So the first thing is the topics makes it difficult. The first thing is that. The second thing is the person, we fear their reaction, and their reaction could be just being upset. I think the third thing is us. We fear our own ability. The number of people I help, that's why I give them personal conversation scripts. What if halfway through I forget what I've got to say? What if I what if I don't do this? What if I this? What if I get upset or whatever it happens to be? And I'll give you the fourth thing that makes them tough. It's ramifications.
Mm.
What if they don't like me from now on? What if this? What if they give me the cold shoulder? What if they complain and think that I'm a bully? All of these things. There's 4 reasons that make some conversations difficult, tough, fierce, upsetting. Those 4 reasons, and it's always some sort of mixture of all of those. But you've asked the most important question is, well, how do you get over it? Well, I'm going to go back to knowing what to say,
Mm.
in what order, what to say in what order. Look, there are 3 codes of communication when we're having these conversations. There's the verbal code, what to actually say, the words that come out your mouth, and that's where I work with people a lot. That the second code is the vocal code. And there's a lot more into that than what people think. Oh, the tonality. Yeah, that's one part of part of it. And then there's the visual code, what you actually do with your hands, face, and
Yes.
arms. And I'm going to give you a little trick right now, if you don't
Cool.
mind. I'll take up your time, but like sometimes it's good to have something to look at. It's very hard looking at someone straight in the face. Eye contact is important, but boy, oh boy, looking at someone who's looking back at you like can be very hard, especially for a new leader.
Mm.
So if you can have something, I'm not suggesting just make up any old bit of paper, but if you have to print out Rob's report to say, look, Rob, yesterday when you hand him a report, there's these problems here. Now, this is very useful. One is I don't have to look at you all the time.
Mhm.
Second trick is this is the problem. Quite often we get through these conversations and you go, oh, Rob, it's not. No, I don't have a problem with you, Rob. It's your report that I'm talking about. But all this conversation really says it's Rob.
Yes.
Until you actually say, look, we've got a problem with this report on this chapter here or this section here. That wording really needs to be changed, whatever it happens to be. So these are little tricks in the visual code that you can use, and it's called allocating negatives.
Mm.
And we allocate positives and negatives all the time to things. But be careful, when you're talking to someone, you often allocate a negative to them. And we get halfway through, I'll cut to the chase and just say that parents know this because they have these talks with their teenage son and daughter, and they get halfway through these conversations. They go, oh, hang on. They know something's wrong. And they say, oh, hang on. Oh, we love you, son. It's your behavior we're talking about. They know that something's gone wrong in this conversation, but everything they've said is really, you've done this, you've done that. This is not happy. Your school report's no good. You were rude to mum. You were late home. You didn't phone. But to be able to say, whatever it happens to be able to say, look, this is the problem here, your school report, to be able to focus on something else. These are little visual tricks that can make your life a lot easier. Once again, once you know how to do those, you build confidence.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow, I didn't know you could do that. Well, there's no rule that says you can't have a Now, I'm well aware that sometimes that doesn't happen. Look, yesterday, Rob, at the staff meeting, you were spending your whole time looking at your phone,
Mhm.
and we had a guest presenter, and it was noticed. Just simple things like that which take the heat off,
Yes.
because this is hard work, looking at someone straight face.
I love that, Mark. I think that body language is so important and breaking that eye contact and focusing on something else. Meanwhile, you're still having that conversation. Those are some great tips. Now, again, the reason I said I wanted to challenge you because we call it a difficult why do we call it a difficult conversation is one thing I tell people is, we're assuming that it's a difficult conversation because we don't know what the outcome of this conversation is going to be, right? So I've gone into difficult conversations where we both came out, it was a win-win situation where we understood the issue, we talked about it, we discussed it, and we came up with a plan for it, and there was no hard feelings. Now, one of the things, when I say difficult conversations and why are we calling it that is because, again, as a young manager or leader, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have that fear in your head that you talked about. Oh man, how is this person going to take it? And the other thing is we create barriers. So you're going in there defensive on the defense. And they're already going in there. They're scared of, am I going to get reprimanded for being called in? And that's where I would love to see some changes made in the wording, at least of it. Just why can't we just call it a conversation rather than a difficult conversation? So that's where I was going with that.
Wow. Wow. Well, so many things in what you just said. And the first one is, yes, we build these things up in our mind. Oh, tomorrow I've got to have this difficult conversation. Well, if you keep telling yourself it's going to be difficult, it will be difficult because you wind yourself up. Nobody says, well, from my experience, no one says they're going to say, I'm going to have a difficult conversation with my wife, or I'll say my wife because as a heterosexual male, I do have a wife, that no one says, I'm going to have a tough conversation. What we're really saying is, I really need to talk to her about whatever happens to be.
Yes.
So they are tough because we build these things up in our mind. I gave you those 4 reasons before. But so I think the best thing is, for me, as I said, once people know what to say, in what order, how to say it, when to stop, when to lean forward and say, so Rob, this is what I want you to do tomorrow. I want you to go to Carol and apologize.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time to all these little things. Once you know what to do, it makes it not so tough. It just makes it a conversation. But I'm going to say there's 3 questions you need to ask yourself before you have one of these conversations. And the first one is, you need to be able to answer what actually happened and what's the problem. I'm shocked, surprised, annoyed by the number of people who have these conversations and they're not sure, because Rob's always a little bit sort of narky at some of the staff meetings. What does that even mean?
Yes.
We need clarity about facts. Not the customer went crazy and threw a stapler at me. Do we still have staplers these days, Rob? So, not that, but no, the person wasn't. But my daughter is belligerent. That's something that someone said to me a while ago. My daughter's belligerent. I said, I don't think your daughter knows what that term means. So, and it's a meaningless term anyway. Can you be more specific? So the very first question is, what happened and what is the problem and the facts? Because if there's no problem, I don't know what you're having this conversation for. The second thing is, what do you want the person to do? And you hinted at this. Every tough conversation, every one of these conversations requires the person to do something. You're not doing it just to shoot your mouth off, hopefully. You're doing it because you want the person to do something. I want them to not use their mobile phone. I want them to fix this report.
Yes.
I want them to do whatever it happens to be. You need to work out what you actually want the person to do. If you're not sure what you want the person to do, I'm not sure what you're having the conversation for. Maybe not have it, because the last thing you want as a leader is for someone to go away and go, I don't know what he was on about. He was just mouthing off. Apparently yesterday I did something he didn't like. We've got to be clear. And the third one, of course, is a tough conversation actually warranted? I said before that things get worse when you don't have a tough conversation with someone when you should. But at the same time, don't have one just because you think I'm the leader, I should do something about it. Be careful of that word, should, because you need to be on very solid footing. This is why I need to have the conversation. If I don't, it's a part of the policies and procedures. I'm the leader. It's my job now. And people often take the kudos of leader. They take the pay. May not be a lot.
Yeah.
And the third thing is you take the responsibility.
Exactly. Amazing.
I'm not sure if that actually answered your question. I
No,
went on to quite a few things.
yeah, I love those 3 points, and, one of the things I speak to everyone about too is make sure you have the facts and figures before you go into these conversations, so it's not subjective, right?
Look, it worries me, the number of people I've dealt with over the years who don't have facts.
Yes.
And these things are not facts. "Oh, I know that Rob really wants my job." Well, that's called intuition and conjecture.
Yes.
I think they're lacking in I think Rob's a bit overconfident. And I said, "Well, hang on, so suddenly now we're psychologists and dis." The fact of the matter is, yesterday at the staff meeting, we had someone get up to speak, a guest presenter. The first thing you said was, "Oh, no, not another woman." That's the fact. And sometimes you have to say it back to the person, "Yesterday at the staff meeting," or "your report," or whatever, "you used this language."
Mhm.
You have to be specific, and people avoid saying because they don't want to use that same sexist or racist language.
Right. Exactly.
But there are ways around it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. Now, I want to share something that you and I talked about. And one of the things you opened my eyes to, something really interesting when it comes to leadership. Now, my philosophy is to lead with kindness, obviously with, boundaries in place. But you helped me realize that you can still be a leader without empathy. And, talk to us about that because I know, you know, the example we used. And help the people understand what you mean around that. And if you can like use a few examples of maybe some of the people who portray that leadership and might not have the empathy.
To be a leader, you need to lead, and I think history shows us there's an awful lot of people who are leaders. That is, they lead and they have followers. If without followers, you're not a leader for very long. But I think history shows us there's an awful lot of leaders around who, well, I'll just go in politics. I'm not going to talk about current politics. In the past, people say 50% of the population says brilliant leader. The other 50% says lousy leader. And it's not their leading, it's their policies, procedures, their behaviors and things like that. So I think we get confused between what a leader is and the sort of leader we would like to have in our what our heart tells us. And these are slightly different. So a leader might have certain policies and procedures and a vision for the company, but they don't necessarily have a whole lot of other attributes like, oh, he's so grumpy or he's so whatever. So ideally, we want a leader who's got both, don't we? The leader leads, they have vision, and on top of that, wouldn't it be nice if they had these kind things? They were an active listener. They delegated fairly. They were kind. They were thoughtful. They come in the morning and say, "Hello, everybody. Good morning." Good manners. All these things are what are trappings, if you like. In the long run, sometimes I might upset some people. As a shareholder in a lot of companies, sometimes I'll be honest here, I'm more concerned about my share portfolio than whether he or she is a nice person or not, because I don't have to work with them. That sounds very selfish. I'm aware of it, but I'm trying to be honest and
Yes.
pragmatic. So it's always a balancing act between, yes, they're a lovely person, but they don't have their vision's all a bit weak and it changes from week to week. We don't want that either. So it's always these two going together. The ability to actually lead and have a vision of where we're going and where we should be, and then have these other skills to be able to take us with it. Because if you've got a great vision, but you don't have these other skills, you will lose followers.
That's right.
Over a period of time, people go, Well, he's got a great idea, but so have other people. Wouldn't it be nice if you could actually combine those? I think that's the role of leaders in this modern world, not just to lead, but to have both of those coming together so we can say, yes, this is the person I want to be my leader for the next 3-4 years,
That's right.
or whatever it happens to be. I as I said earlier, we're lumping so much, though, on the shoulders of leaders. They not only have to lead, they have to be an active listener, they have to have empathy, they have to kind, they have to build in a succession plan. I can't even think of all the things now, but these positive attributes go on, and I think we get confused between what is a leader per se.
Yes.
That's a leader, whether you like them or not. This person is the leader, whether you like it or not. And what we think is a good leader, a kind leader, a true leader, a brilliant leader, a great leader. These are the people that we, in our heart, love.
Exactly.
And they can be very different things. I actually think you can be two things at once. You can be a great leader, but not such a great person.
Interesting. No, I love that.
That might not be the right expression, but
Yeah.
you get the
No,
picture.
I love that. And like I said, that opened my eyes to, looking and saying, yeah, there are leaders out there that have the followers, but they don't have certain attributes that we want in leadership, right? So again, thanks.
Take it on the other hand, what we want.
That's right. Exactly.
And unfortunately, different people want different things and they value different things. Yeah, he's great at this and he always remembers everyone's birthday, but his vision is a bit wonky. So
Yeah.
we want a lot from leaders, and we're expecting more and more. I don't think that's necessarily. I said that we're overburdening some leaders. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be a little bit overburdened every now and then, but I think we need to be careful, especially for these young leaders. They come up through the ranks. It's their
Yeah.
first opportunity. Come on, let them lead, and then we'll put in the trappings over the next
Yeah.
6 months about it would be better if, and the way you got up at that staff meeting, it'd be nicer if you smiled a little bit.
That's right. Exactly. And providing that feedback to them is critical as well. Awesome. Thanks, Mark. So before we end this podcast, we've reached a segment where I like to call rapid fire questions. So I'm going to shoot some questions your way. And again, the first thing that comes to mind, just spill it out.
Oh, this sounds dangerous.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, go for it.
All right. So what was the one piece of advice that you would share with leaders?
Be willing to step up to the plate and have the hard conversations you need to have, because it builds not only self-respect, it builds respect amongst the team and your audience. No one wants a leader that says, well, he's good, but he doesn't have the hard conversations. And that's a big mistake. You've got to have them, but you've got to have them in the right way.
That's right.
That's it. Don't be scared of stepping up to the plate.
Absolutely. So what's the one book that changed your perspective on leadership?
You know what? This is wowee. I'm going to go back to Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I read that for the first time in the 1990s when I was on a plane going to I'm a quick reader, by the way. So, and I thought, wow, I had no idea that this is the way that the world sort of worked, and everything in there made sense. That's the one thing that changed my life. I always thought, Rob, you didn't have to say these things. And suddenly I realized, oh, they're not mind readers. I actually have to ask people how they feel. I thought they understood. That's the book. Changed my life. In fact, you've just made me realize I should read it again.
Nice. I have it too. I got to read it again too. It was a great book for sure.
Oh, terrific.
So what's your personal mantra when facing challenges?
Wow. Take control.
Ooh.
I always say take control of tough conversations. That's why I like that. Take control doesn't mean to be pushy or bossy. It means take control. You are the one that has to make this relationship work. You are the one who has to take control of you,
Mhm.
not other people. You need to take control of you, what you say, how you behave, how you act. Yes, indeed, you can write whatever you like in that memo to staff, but if they see you behaving in a different way, you're going to lose it. So yes, I think take control. Take control of how you act, how you behave, what you say to people. It's you. You have that power. Make it happen.
Amazing. So, what's the one best word that describes Mark?
Oh wow, thoughtful.
Mm, amazing.
I- I'll say that I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. Yesterday, I was leaf blowing our front yard, and I did the 3 other yards in our down
Nice.
the street as well. And why didn't I do that? No, I'm not the nicest person on earth. It's just the sort of thing you do when you're in a community.
Exactly.
It's the stuff you do. You don't have to think about it. Just like, hey, I'm here. I'm already dirty. Yeah, so I think I'll give myself a pat on the back. So I thoughtful, but I don't just mean it things like that. When I see posts on LinkedIn, I'm thoughtful in that I think about them. Hang on a minute here. Is that true? Is
Mm,
that actually right? And I think yes, I think about things. I like to think is I read something and I say yes, but, and I'll also like to say yes and
yes.
the extra bit. So that can get you into trouble a bit. Sometimes it's best just to zip, zip it.
Yeah. Especially with today's social media.
Oh yes, oh yes. Be very careful.
That's right.
Sometimes it's easy to say, great post."
Yes. And move on. Awesome. Mark, and the last question is, where can people find you?
I do have a website, markmcpherson.com.au. The AU on the end is very important
Yeah.
if you want to find me and not someone else around the world. But look, I'm going to go for LinkedIn just because a lot of people use it. It's very convenient. It's very easy. LinkedIn tells you when there's a message for you, so
Mhm.
it's very helpful. Not only does it say it on the website, I also get an email saying someone has sent you a message. So I think that's the most convenient way. And I'm going to say this: many people finish these things with, "I've got an offer for you." My offer to your listeners and followers, Rob, because you're a leader in this,
Thank you.
is if you just want to get something off your chest, give me a call. Tell me on LinkedIn. I'm not going to be selling you something. There's no hard sell here. I don't have the latest book that I'm trying to sell you. Have a conversation with me. And even if it's a case of, Mark, you won't believe what happened the other day in my office. And if I can give you some tips or give you some advice, if people want some of my personal conversation scripts, I'm really happy to pass those. We didn't really talk about those today because it wasn't that sort of a show, but I write those for people so they know what to say in what order, and that gives them great confidence when they go in saying, "Okay, this is," because too many people go in, Rob, with, "Oh, I've got to tell them about."
Yes.
Tell them about. We can do better than that. So LinkedIn's a good way.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much for, for putting yourself out there and sharing that with people and having people reach out to you to help them out. I think that's great. We need a lot more people like you out there that are willing to help people and not just
You're being too kind.
no, no, because everyone's trying to sell something, and I think it's good to, help those in need of help. And trust me, it will come back tenfold to you. So again, I want to thank you so much, Mark, for joining me on this podcast today. I personally learned so much from you, not only from this conversation but our past conversation as well. So thank you so much for this. And for the audience listening in, if you've got any questions for Mark, I will share the links, on the post, and you can put it in the comments below, and I'll make sure it gets to Mark and he can answer it. And if you like these podcasts, subscribe and follow for more at RK Leadership Podcast. and we'll definitely see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody, and thank you so much again, Mark.
Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your life.
Thank you.
Thank you.